Good evening, everyone. I'm Eva Pastorelli from Citibank Watch Network, the largest network of environmental groups in Central and Eastern European countries, committed for over 25 years to the transformation of public finance and environmental and climate policies in the EU. I welcome you to the second in the webinar series, Hydrogen Green Deal or Greenwashing. Recommend, together with Observatori del Deute and la Globalizzazione, will carry out with the European project Citizens Observatory for Green Deal Financing, which is a project in which 9 European organizations are working together to demand greater transparency and fair distribution of public funds at a European and national level, and to give centrality to the voices of communities. So I welcome now today's speakers, who are Elena Cerebiza, researchers and campaigner, Energy and Infrastructure Recommon. Good evening, Elena. Rita Prates, a PhD in Chemical Engineering and Policy Officer of the Portuguese NGO Zero. Josep Nualar Corpas, Energy and Climate Researcher, Observatory del Deute and la Globalizzazione. Good evening, Josep. Before getting to the heart of the webinar, I'd like to give you some practical information. During the meeting, there will be simultaneous translation, Italian, English, and Spanish. So by clicking on the icon of the world on the right at the bottom, you can decide which language to listen to. Questions can be asked in written form via the question and answer function. In the second part of the webinar, we will try to answer the question. We will try to answer them all, but if due to time constraints we're unable to do so, we will reply after the event. Okay, we can start now. So, in the last webinar of this webinar series, we presented the technical limitation of using green hydrogen on a large scale, and we saw that both Italy and Spain aim to be Mediterranean energy hubs by revitalising existing pipelines for transporting gas, hydrogen, and biomethane, but also by building new ones. So it is no coincidence that the EU's oversized and underused fossil gas pipeline network has been dubbed by the fossil lobby as Europe's future hydrogen backbone, and would be used to resurrect a mega project with economic benefits for energy oligopolies and negative impacts on the communities and territories where these projects fall, even outside Europe's border, as we will see during this webinar. In this second webinar, we expand our gaze to the Mediterranean and the hydrogen routes that cross this area. Our speakers will present some projects explaining why these are not green at all, because they replicate the same dynamics, the same centralizing and extractivist dynamics that have led us to this climate, social and environmental crisis. And just today, Recommon published a new report on Melita gas pipeline, which connects Malta to Sicily, and which, according to the proponents, should also transport hydrogen. So Melita is a project on which there are shadows and many interests. So gas is considered as a transition means. So there will be negative impacts from an environmental point of view. So I invite you to go and watch it on the Recommends YouTube page, and I will put then the link in our chat. So let's start with Recommon and Elena Gerebizza. So, partly echoing Professor Setti's conclusions about the unsustainability of the green hydrogen supply chain, so she will explain what lies behind the South H2 corridor project, which is, we can say, the motorway that in theory should transport hydrogen from Algeria to Italy. So, Elena, it's up to you. Thank you, Eva. Can you hear me? Yes, it perfectly. So I just shared my presentation. Just a minute. Here we are. That's it. So, as Eva said, we start from general inputs, we can say. So, in order to give you some historical details, since the publication of the EU hydrogen strategy in 2020, many research institutes and activists, among which us and the Observatory Zero, so helped to develop a more critical view about hydrogen, so about also the transition to hydrogen, as the European Commission said, and underlying the interests of multinationals that, as Eva said at the beginning, have their own vision on this transition. So there are many groups and researchers saying nowadays that we can think about green hydrogen only if this is sustainable, produced in hydrogen valleys for a limited local use for those enterprises having a huge problem in terms of decarbonization. So for hard to abate sectors. So Repower EU, and in particular this policy pack of the European Union that should have been a response to the Russian invasion. So Repower relaunched green hydrogen production outside of the EU, so explicitly mentioning supply countries of green hydrogen and raw materials needed in order to decarbonize the European Union. So the perspective changes completely. In our research, that was mentioned by Professor Setti in the last webinar, that we called the illusion of green hydrogen. So in this study, we tried to explore the question. So would green hydrogen production and supply chain organized to achieve the EU and the Italian objectives, because we are involved in this, would this be sustainable? So the answer, unfortunately, is no. There are many critical aspects, but one of the fundamental aspects is that considering the developments of investments in the next generation EU packet, so what we call the PNNR, and considering the kinds of projects and the advancement of these projects, we've seen that green hydrogen valleys projects are moving really slowly and with many criticalities. The perspective, the most likely scenario is that
modo
institution
in
will
cui
push
questo idrogeno
for a
colloide
context where
verrebbe
hydrogen
trasportato da
will
fuori
be
dall'Unione
imported
Europea e da
long
altri
distance
paesi.
from
Questo
outside the
aumenta le
European Union.
importazioni
This
di
has
prodotti
obviously
importati, prima
huge
di tutto
impacts,
perché
for
sarebbero
instance, because
soluzioni
it would be
estremamente
an
energy
extremely
intensive,
energy intensive
inglese
solution.
e che
This
richiede
means that it
implementazioni
requires a high,
enormi
huge
sulla
quantity of
pressione alta.
energy in
Quindi
order
questa
to
rotta
be
sinuosa
deployed. So long distance
produce energia
transport
ed
is
è
extremely energy
estremamente
intensive
inefficiente.
and energy inefficient.
E c'è tutta la questione della
Then
fattibilità
there's
reale del
the questions
trasporto
concerning
dell'idrogeno
feasibility and
attraverso i
cost of
traghetti dedicati al 100% allo
100%
scopo
hydrogen
dell'idrogeno
pipeline.
e poi ci
And
sono
then
tutte le
there
questioni
are other
relative al
aspects to be
recupero,
taken into
stoccaggio
account, for
e alla
instance,
dimensione economica e
storage, and
sociale
also
proprio
the
di
social and
questa
economic
economia
justice
sociale
dimension is
che è
extremely
una
important to be
produzione di idrogeno fuori
considered.
dall'Unione
So,
Europea va
production of
fermata
hydrogen
e
outside
c'è
the
sottoposto
European Union would
una
have a huge
riorganizzazione
impact from a social and economic
delle
point of view.
relazioni con
So,
altri paesi
uh, there
che
will be
ovviamente stanno
relationships with
postando
other
proprio
countries,
come
and
vaglio di
European Union is
spazzatura di
really
risorse
working on
ed
that in order
energie.
to
Quindi invece
capture
di un'operazione
resources
di
in an old
mix energetico in cui si
fashioned style.
guarda
So,
alle risorse
like
particolari
we
della
saw in the past with
problematica, ma
colonialism.
anche
So,
di paesi
resources and energy will
tipicamente
be
Africa subsahariana,
grabbed in
paesi
North
dell'America
Africa,
Latina, che
rain,
sono deficitari
Sub-Saharan
proprio di
Africa,
queste
and
fonti
Latin
esterne
America. So,
di
these are
repauration.
all countries which are mentioned.
E per citare alcuni dei punti
Here, just
critici,
you see
ad
the
esempio
most
il
important
trasporto
criticalities we have
sull'interdipendenza.
underlined.
In Italia noi
The long
abbiamo
distance
lavorato alla
transport
creazione
to
oggi
Italy, we
di
have
reti di
considered the
trasporto su
situation
lunga distanza
nowadays.
dotata di 13
Today, the
centrali di
long distance transport
trasferimento. A
network
Roma è stata
is
installata
made up of
complessivamente di
13
261
plants
megawatts.
for
Questa
an
è una
installed
potenza
capacity of
estremamente
961
molto
megawatts.
bassa
So
ed
this
è quella dorsale del gas
is something
italiano.
needed just to
Vedremo
move
forse
gas
la parte
on the
centrale
Italian
del nuovo
backbone, that is
rivitalising
the central part
dell'idrogeno.
of the southern
Quindi
corridor.
per
So,
muovere gas
in order
oggi
to
ci serve
move
questa
gas,
potenza.
now we need
Per
this
muovere
power. And in
ipoteticamente
order to
l'idrogeno ci
move
servirebbe
hydrogen,
almeno
we would
3 volte
need at
più
least
energia, che
three
sarebbe
times more
corrispondente a
the
circa 3
energy,
terawattora
the
per
power
anno
of
e
compression
sia
required
equivalente
for
all'intera
mm,
capacità di
transport of fossil
trasferimento
gas,
installata
so
oggi in Italia.
20
Quindi
terawatt per
vedremo appunto
year. So
quando
this
si
is
snoda questa
something
paradossa.
absurd
Se
and
guardiamo invece alla questione
unfeasible. If we
dell'esportazione
consider
dell'idrogeno
the
sul fogliaggio e trasporto su lunga distanza,
this
bisogna
transport
ricordare
of
che in questi giorni il
hydrogen in liquid form, we have to consider that nowadays we
per
speak a
portare
lot
gas
about
dalla
liquid
forma
gas. So
gassosa
in
alla sua
order
forma
to
liquida
move
bisogna
gas
abbassare,
from gas
portare a
to
una
liquid,
temperatura
we have
intorno a
to reach
162
a
gradi
temperature
centigradi.
of
Per fare l'idrogeno
minus
liquido
156
bisogna portarlo a meno
degrees. And so,
253 gradi
in order
centigradi.
to
Quindi
do this in a
siamo
proper
al
way, we
massimo
really
perché
need to
serve
reach
molta
lower
energia,
temperatures. And for
servono
this, we need
serbatoi
more
dedicati
energy, dedicated
e
basins
alla
for
fine
this,
pensiamo
and
che
in the
la
end,
dispersione
also
energetica
dispersion
è
of
assolutamente
energy is
importante.
huge.
Se si guarda al trasporto
If we
complessivo
consider
dell'idrogeno via
the
mare, c'è
transportation
una
of these
narrazione anche su
uh,
come
hydrogen
l'euroshipping potrebbe
via ship,
decarbonizzarsi con
so
idrogeno e
also
gas.
shipping could be
Purtroppo noi
decarbonized. Also, in
guardando
this case,
appunto
we made an
scenari un po'
assumption.
meno,
So
meno standard
we
perché
considered
storici
a standard
215.000 metri
shape,
cubi di GNL,
uh,
ipotizzando che la stessa nave
and
trasporti invece
if
idrogeno
we
liquido,
consider that
trasporterebbe una
a
quantità
ship
di circa
is
10
adapted to
miliardi metri
transport
d'idrogeno.
hydrogen of
E per
15,000
un
tons by
viaggio
weight, would
dall'Italia alla
consume
Cina,
for
questo
30
eccezionalmente
days
utilizzerebbe il
of trip,
settimo del carico
so would
trasportato
consume
per
one seventh
autoalimentarsi. Quindi
of
vediamo anche qua
transported
che
hydrogen
in termini di
in order
efficienza
to power
energetica
the ship.
decisamente
So you can notice that this is not an
Arriviamo a
advantage.
bomba sul
And now
corridoio
we
Sud
go straight to the
Idrovolt.
point of
Allora,
South
di questo
H2
gasdotto si è
corridor.
sentito
So
parlare per la
we
prima
heard
volta
about
nel
this
settembre
pipeline in
2023,
February
quando il primo
2023 for
ministro
the first
Meloni
time
ha
when
fatto
the
un
Prime Minister
viaggio in
Meloni
Algeria
traveled to
che
Algeria.
appunto ha
And
rilanciato il
on
piano
that
di
occasion,
costruire un
she
potenziale
spoke about
corridoio
the
dedicato al
potential plan to
trasporto
build a new pipeline
idrogeno.
dedicated to the transport
Il
of H2
ministro Meloni
between
ha anche
Algeria and Italy.
parlato
So
di un più
Prime
ampio piano
Minister
Mattei
Meloni
per
mentioned
l'Africa,
a new
che
Piano
sarebbe
Mattei for
un
Africa,
piano di
so a
investimenti
plan, an investment
che
plan
ancora non sono
for
assolutamente
Africa,
noti i
and
dettagli,
now we don't know the
però
details.
sarebbe
But
già
anyway, it's a
proposto
plan
nel
that has
settentrionale
been
per
proposed
raggiungere
and
gli
shared by the
obiettivi
Italian government,
ambiziosi
having two core
dell'energia
issues.
e
So
quello
energy
della
on one
gestione dei
side
flussi
and
dei migranti.
migration
Il
flows
ministro degli
management.
esteri
So
Tajani
Minister of Foreign Affairs
ha fatto
Tajani
riferimento allo stesso
referred
piano
to
facendo
it, saying
che il
that
governo
the
italiano
Italian
guarda al
government is
continente
looking
africano
at the
non come
African
soltanto
continent
africano,
from
come per dire
An African
stiamo
perspective.
cercando
So
di
this means that
creare
we are
degli
trying to
investimenti che
create an
facessero
investment plan having
senso anche
making
per le
sense
popolazioni
for
dei paesi
us
africani
and
per
for
le
the
comunità
population of the
africane.
African, sub-Saharan African
L'altro elemento che
area.
appunto
Another
è contemporaneo a questo piano, in
element
realtà un po' lo precede,
that
è
has
che
to
a
be
gennaio
underlined in
2023
January
abbiamo visto che
2023,
l'unico gasdotto
the only
esistente in
pipeline
via
existing
ufficiale con
today
l'Algeria
connecting Italy to
ha
Algeria
avuto un importante cambio nella
has
strutturazione del
been
piano, e cioè SNAM,
changed.
la
So
società che
SNAM, that is the
gestisce
company
questo piano
managing the whole Italian
trasporto
network
di gas
for
su
the
lunga
transport
distanza,
of
è a
gas on a long
decidere
distance,
proponente
and it is
della dorsale
the
dell'idrogeno
main
e della
proposing
resurrect,
enterprise
la
for
dorsale europea
hydrogen,
per
pushing for
l'idrogeno,
the hydrogen
ha
backbone
acquisito il
in Italy. So SNAM acquired
49,9% della proprietà di
49.9% of the existing
questa rete di
Algeria-Italy
gasdotti che lega l'Italia
pipeline.
all'Algeria.
So
Eni rimane proprietario
Eni
del
is the main owner,
50,1%, e nel momento in cui è
50.1%,
avvenuto
and
questo cambio,
when
diciamo, della
this
gestione
change
dell'Italia,
occurred,
entrambe le società hanno fatto
both
riferimento a questo
enterprises
gasdotto come
referred
una rete
to this
strategica,
pipeline as a
sia
strategic
per le
route,
forniture di gas
both
e
for gas supply
per
and
potenzialmente
to
mettersi in una posizione
take
vantaggiosa
advantage of
in
an
ambito
hydrogen
di
supply
produzione
chain
dell'idrogeno, che potrebbe
to be
svilupparsi grazie alle
developed thanks
risorse del
to
Nord Africa.
resources coming from North Africa.
Questa è una mappa
So
stilizzata
this is a
di
map
di
showing
questo corridoio.
this corridor.
Innanzitutto la
So
quota del
first of
transmed
all, you
sono
see
già
the transmed
1.200 km di
quota. So
gasdotti che sono stati
1,000
costruiti
to
negli anni 80
1,200
e
kilometers of
collegano
pipelines built by
fondamentalmente
Eni in the 80s, and they
l'Algeria,
connect
poi
a part which is
attraversano
totally in
Tunisia e poi il
Algeria, then
Mediterraneo,
it
giungano in
crosses
Sicilia, e poi il
Tunisia,
collegamento
then
con
underground Sicily, and the
l'Italia.
connection with the Italian network.
E dal gennaio 2023
From
appunto la
January
situazione
2023, the
proprietà di
situation
questo gasdotto,
compare
cioè la
uh,
tratta algerina, è
about this
rimasta in mano alla
property. So
Sonatrach, quindi
the
al gruppo di
Algerian
Stato
part is
del
under
gas Algeria,
Sonatrach, that is
mentre la
a
parte
domestic
che
enterprise
attraversa la
from
penisola
Algeria,
della
while the
consegna
part
mediterranea
crossing
è stata
Tunisian and the
riorganizzata a
Mediterranean Sea has
seguito
been
di questa
reorganized,
nuova
and
società che
now
si
it
chiama
is
Sea
the
Corridor
property
SRL,
of Sea
controllata
Corridor
appunto al
SRL, which is
49% da
controlled
SNAM e al 51,9%
49.9% by
da
SNAM
Eni.
and 50.1% by Eni.
Questa tratta
This
gasdotto quindi
path
fa
pathway,
parte
this
di
transmed,
rete di
is part
corridoi per il trasporto
of the
dell'idrogeno che è stata presentata a maggio
network that has
2023
been
dalle
presented in May
principali società che lo
2023
trasporto di
by
gas
the main
europee.
enterprises for the
Anzitutto la
transport
presentazione del
of gas
proprio
in the
hanno
European
presentato la loro
Union. So they
visione del
presented
piano di
their
investimenti necessario a
vision
costruire
about the
il
investment
mercato
plan needed to
dell'idrogeno
implement
attraverso, anche se in
uh,
altri
a
linguaggi,
nitrogen market, a renewable and low carbon hydrogen market. So the idea was to reach a climate neutral Europe. So we see that there is the part of the corridor coming from Algeria, the one which is indicated by letter A, but there are many other corridors, and we will speak today of one another one. So the investment plan, according to the enterprises, among which this NAM is between 80 and 130 billion euros. SNAM is, we can say, on a leading position, as we saw before, because it controls Transmer gas pipeline, but also some other key components of the EU H2 backbone. So there will be a huge advantage for SNAM. So we have, we can say that SNAM is in a good position also from the point of view of TAG, the Trans-Austria Gas Pipeline. So a part of this pipeline will be reoriented towards Germany and for the transportation of hydrogen. So SNAM in Italy is already investing in order to increase the power, the pushing power, in order to allow a bidirectional transportation, because now they are investing in order to import gas as in the past, but also to export gas and to increase there is an increase for Italy and for SNAM to export gas towards Austria and the central part of Europe. Always in the big corporation plans, there is the idea of starting with 28,000 kilometers of gas pipelines to approximately 53,000 kilometers by 2040. So this is the next stage of the corporate plan, from 28,000 kilometers up to 53,000 kilometers. So I conclude with some considerations. So our question is green hydrogen literature, we can say, a sort of trigger? It has been used. Green hydrogen may be a trigger for public investment into retrofitting of the gas transport and distribution system for the construction of a market where hydrogen produced by nuclear or gas may also circulate. So there is the will to invest public resources, and this could also represent an obstacle in the transition if we consider the social justice. Another important aspect I would like to underline is the social justice. So there is here a neo-colonialism from the energy point of view towards other countries. So Europe and other and bigger corporates really consider the possibility to exploit other countries in other continents, and also hydrogen can be seen as a real good. So a new good for a new market, and this new commodity, we can say, hydrogen, can be produced also with by nuclear or gas, fossil gas, because in the end, the interest is to have a market, and the interest is that if first island. So the consequence of this lack of justice towards the other countries is that we risk a gas lock-in for the EU economy. So these infrastructures should have also a plan for dismiss in 2050 the old infrastructure, but then they will be transformed in order to transport hydrogen. And so as a Melita gas pipeline will be renamed hydrogen pipeline, and that's it. So this is the criticality, and thank you for your attention. Thank you, Elena. As usual, everything is clear. I do not want to add nothing more to your conclusion because I share them, because I don't want to take time to the other speaker.
Quindi a guardare ad un altro progetto, questa volta in Portogallo con
So let's take a look at another project, this time a Portuguese project with Rita Prates, who is a chemical engineer and policy officer for the environmental agency, Zero. I would like to ask you, Rita, to introduce us to the Zero activities and to the CELSA project. Can you please tell us what you do and what you have found out about this project? Thank you, and I'll give you the floor.
Hello, Eva, and thank you so much for the invitation. It was very interesting to see the Italian point of view, and clearly the south of Europe has been affected by this hydrogen hype. So Rita Prats, I'm working at Zero. I've been working on hydrogen and industry and energy in general in Portugal this last year. And I will present you here the hydrogen pipelines that we have that are predicted to Portugal as well. I will share my screen. So is everything okay? Can I start the presentation?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you. Just to give a little context, Zero, it's an environmental NGO in Portugal, one of the biggest NGOs in Portugal. We have over 3,000 associates, 20 people working full-time, dozens of volunteers, and we have a very privileged position near decision makers, politicians, and the national media, but also in Brussels. So our approach is always to try to give counsel to decision makers, but also citizens and in general stakeholders. Now, regarding the hydrogen, I would like to add that I'm here representing Zero, but also a coalition of Portuguese NGOs that have been trying to fight really hard, not only the hydrogen pipeline that is predicted for the Iberian Peninsula, but also the high risk of using this pipeline to continue to transport fossil gas and to continue the fossil gas industry. So in general, what we are fighting against, we are fighting for the end of fossil fuels, and this includes fossil gas. And this means, of course, no more fossil gas infrastructure, and because of that, no H2Med. H2Med, it's the name of the hydrogen pipeline that is coming from Portugal and Spain towards France and finally Germany that our colleague presented before. And finally, regarding hydrogen in general, I think we have pretty much the same position. Green hydrogen can be very valuable in the energy transition, but it's highly inefficient. We have a lot of energy losses, safety issues in transportation, etc., etc. So for us, green hydrogen should be used for those hard to abate sectors. And should be produced locally, produced and consumed locally. So we try to avoid transporting hydrogen. Just to give you a context of the Portuguese of the Portuguese energy scenario, I will ask you to look on your left side. This is our energy consumption last year. We are not using coal anymore, and we don't have nuclear. We have basically fossil gas, 32%, and 49% of renewables. Also, we have some imports of energy, and we are trying to reduce the plans for 2030 will be to reduce fossil gas to 8%. I would just like you to notice this little note up here in the slide, because from the fossil gas that we are using, a big part of it is Russian gas, even now, and this is an important point for what we will present afterwards. So, if you well remember the map that was presented before by my colleague, this is the pipeline that is predicted to go starting to in Portugal, going through Spain, passing out through the Mediterranean to France, and it should go until Germany. And this is the H2 Med, and as you can see, it starts over here. It should start over here, and it's the continuation of the actual fossil gas pipeline that we already have here that starts in Sines. Sines is our big port that receives natural gas. So that's why it should come. The idea is that it should come from Sines, use the fossil gas pipeline, and then use the H2 Med to transport hydrogen. So the red one should be the new pipeline, while the blue one is the one that already exists, that is being used to transport fossil gas. So just to give you a little bit of a context before we started talking about hydrogen. So in 2018, we had REN, which is our company responsible for the energy transport grid. REN had a project to continue our fossil gas pipeline over here. Okay, this would be the third interconnection of fossil gas between Portugal to Spain, and this project was rejected by our Portuguese environmental government association. It was rejected because this pipeline would pass by a region that is UNESCO World Heritage. It is protected back then, so it was rejected. Eventually, we started talking very recently about green hydrogen, and basically they took exactly the same pipeline project, exactly the same, and said, okay, this pipeline won't be used for natural gas, for fossil gas. This is the green corridor. This pipeline will be to transport green hydrogen. Okay. And this is called CELSA pipeline because it comes from a city, Celurico, and it goes until Zamora in Spain. So CELSA. This is our famous Celsa. And what's the problem about Celsa? Well, firstly, they claim that they will use it for hydrogen production. However, here, there's absolutely nothing. There's no industry, there's no hydrogen production, there's no renewable energy production. The only thing that you have over here is the fossil gas pipeline that comes from Sines. So, if we don't have hydrogen production here, and if this gas pipeline is not adapted to 100% hydrogen, it's not even adapted to gas blending with hydrogen. So we believe that this Celsa pipeline will be used, claiming that it should be used for green hydrogen, but at the end it will be used to transport fossil gas, and fossil gas eventually with 10% or 15% of hydrogen. But the problem is this pipeline, it's a new infrastructure that will lock in the continuation of usage and selling fossil gas. And even if we consider that, okay, we will transport only green hydrogen, 100% green hydrogen through all over these pipelines, out of Portugal, throughout Spain. Again, we have too many energy losses, so we don't believe this is the right way to transport energy. Sorry about this slide, it is in Portuguese, but basically what this slide is saying is that, again, if we do transport hydrogen, we would have to adapt all the other pipelines, and this would require to take out like 600 to 800 kilometers of pipeline that is like under the soil, and do a readaptation to hydrogen. And as you know, this is technically very complicated and extremely costly, and we don't even know how much this will be. We just have data of how to readapt to 10% of hydrogen, not 100% of hydrogen. So I have showed you the Celsa pipeline of hydrogen, but actually we have 3 hydrogen pipeline projects that were submitted to projects of common interest lists from the European Commission. So we have the Celsa pipeline that was in the previous slide, but we also have this one and this one. So this one, indeed, there's a lot of there are many projects of renewable energies in this region. However, we have many industries that will consume hydrogen, so we don't understand why we should build a pipeline to transport hydrogen that will be consumed here. So there's a high risk that we will export hydrogen and we are not giving hydrogen to the industries that need it. And this one in particular, it's quite curious. It starts here in the center of Portugal. In here, there's no production of hydrogen, no industry. Actually, there's pretty much there's not much in this region, unfortunately. There are not even projects yet of renewable energy. So we do wonder if this pipeline starts here and ends up over there. Where are they going to pick up hydrogen here? Because there's no production over here. And these 3 hydrogen pipelines, they are around 414 millions of euros, which is extremely costly and not at all justified. What have we done so far? So we are fighting against this pipeline because we don't see a proper justification for such high investments. We've been doing public consultation, press releases, protests, and webinars explaining to civil society here in Portugal what is happening. But it's quite of a difficult subject to talk about because it's extremely technical, and even for energy specialists it's difficult to understand. So civil society, it's not an easy subject to talk about indeed. But what I would like also to ask you is that I feel that Portugal, Spain, Italy, even though the projects are different, but they are pretty much in the same position. We are having pipelines that are being built here that will cost a lot of money, that we don't understand yet if they are actually needed or not. We know that we need this hydrogen for Central Europe and for Germany, for example, but so far we don't know how much hydrogen does Germany and other countries need exactly. How much hydrogen does different certain sector needs? That is not clear yet. And before investing in this huge investment pipelines, this should be assessed. And also, again, my colleague said it all, but we are creating the risk that in the countries that are producing hydrogen, they won't have green hydrogen from themselves. So you have a kind of new colonialism, as you said, outside of Europe and inside of Europe. And also, should we transport hydrogen? What's the new energy grid that we need? These are the questions that should be addressed. And I hope I'm in time. I didn't pass my time, but thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Grazie a te Rita, eri perfettamente nei tempi. Poni delle questioni.
Thank you, Rita, and timing was perfect, and you asked very significant questions, and probably
però l'obiettivo di questo webinar è quello di innanzitutto
you already know that the goal of this webinar series is to simplify language and make the debate on hydrogen a little bit easier to understand, even for people who do not really know the technical aspects of the hydrogen issue. I think that this kind of initiative is very useful for networking and for an exchange of views, information, and we hope we will be able to get this information from Germany, and I hope we will stay in touch so we can work together with other partners also from Germany, why not? And I would like to thank you for your very clear presentation, and now I'll give the floor to the last panelist. Up to now, we've been talking about the Mediterranean area, even if Rita anticipated that there will be consequences also outside the borders of the EU. As our panelists told us, the supply chain of hydrogen is not limited to the Mediterranean area, and Europe is looking to other countries, other suppliers, which sometimes are located in a totally different area of the world. For example, Chile, which is a country that is considered a priority for the EU in terms of hydrogen production and import. So I would like to introduce Observatorio del Deute della Globalización, and our expert, Joseph Nualat Corpas, was with us during our previous webinar, and today he will talk about H2Med again and the consequences that hydrogen production is creating in Chile, because the Observatorio has recently sent some of its representatives to Chile, and now they can report about what is happening. Thank you very much for your presentation, Eva. My presentation is in Spanish, and I would like to share my screen now. And I'm going to talk about what is happening in Chile, as Eva was saying. Last year, however, we collected some information, and I would like to share it with you. Our Portuguese and Italian colleagues have talked about the role of Spain as a country of transition of the hydrogen, which will then travel to Northern Europe. This is a very short presentation. As Eva said, we took part in several campaigns, and this is our presentation actually, and I would like to start from this slide to show you that the Spanish state would like to become a hydrogen hub, and it is already a fossil gas hub. So the Spanish state would like to use the current infrastructure, which you can see on the right, for the transport of hydrogen. You can see it on the left side of the screen. So this is a projection by the Spanish company Red Troncal, and the structural flows have been organized with a very bad planning of the distribution and transport of gas. In black, you can see the projections, and in red, you can see the consumption. As you can see, there is no matching. Enagás would like to take advantage of this excess of infrastructures in order to use them for hydrogen transport. I would like to show you this meme, which is aimed at making fun of the promotion of hydrogen carried out by the Spanish state. The dinosaurs of fossil fuel companies will take advantage of this green hydrogen revolution, and they're saying that they are converting their transport network. And Enagás has presented this new network in January 2023 for green goals, and an expression of interest call has been presented, has been issued. There is a kind of reverse process. The infrastructure has been built, and then they decide who should produce and provide resources. So we're not talking about retrofitting anymore. Here in Spain, we're talking about a matching of the pipelines. We're not, it is not really clear whether the existing pipelines will be retrofitted or whether other pipelines will be built. You can see on the diagram the strategies for 2030 for the Spanish state in the energy sector, and we can see that the assessment that has been carried out has multiplied by 3 the number of electrolyzers which should be installed in 2030 over the stretches that has been identified, and it is a 3-year project which has been approved by the Spanish state. If we take into consideration the hydrogen routes, I would like to show you once again something that Rita has already mentioned. You can see the Celsa in purple from Colarico to Zamora, and then using red Troncal, which is the Spanish network, shown in the blue and green lines, and then in Barcelona we have an underwater stretch in dark green, which will travel to Marseille. So we're talking about Bar-Mar, Barcelona and Marseille. So as Rita was saying, there is a Spanish part by Enagas, the French side is Teragas, and then SNAM, the Italian stakeholder, will all take part in the project. We're talking about interconnections between the member states of the project, and there are some common interest projects envisioning energy connections which provide benefits, and they can be financed by European institutions and approved by European institutions in order to ensure the possibility to further develop these projects, even if these projects are not really viable and feasible. Now, let's talk about Chile a little bit. I think that stating that Chile is the savior of Europe is an overstatement. There is a connection between the energy strategies of the European Union and the energy strategy of Chile, and we can see it in Repower EU. 16 million tons of renewable hydrogen are required. They can be imported into Europe, and the same figure appears in the Chilean strategies. By 2030, Chile aims at becoming the world leader in the production of electrolyzed produced hydrogen. Take a look at the map. In orange, you can see Chile. In 2030, it will be the country where the production of hydrogen will be absolutely the cheapest in the world compared to other countries which are taking part in the hydrogen race. And we should take a look at this using the magnifier of the stakeholders' energy strategies. As Eva was saying, there are several plans, energy strategies, which see Chile as a strategic stakeholder, not only as for hydrogen is concerned, but as a provider of, for example, lithium and other elements, which is a key factor in energy transition. And so if you take a look at strategies adopted outside the European Union, you can see that there is a connection with the strategies adopted by countries which will play a key role in energy transition, which has become one of the obsessions of the EU, especially after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So Team Europe, which is the EU project involving Chile, is clearly connected to this obsession, and you can see several connections between the European Union, which, for example, has a specific demand for green hydrogen, and they have the technologies and funds to implement the project, while Chile has a strategy for the production of green hydrogen, the potential for renewable energy, but also needs technologies and funding in order to implement this project. And so these initiatives are clearly concerted. There is a transition here, which will cost 4 million euros for Chile, and it is aimed at a strengthening of an environment which is favorable to the development of green hydrogen and the technological and human resource development, but also international cooperation. Multinationals, of course, are extremely interested in this. European corporations see Chile as a niche market for green energy, especially hydrogen. And you can see that these are the main projects which have been proposed in Chile in 2022. We have counted them, and there are 60 of them, and there will be further projects in the near future, and we can see the companies behind these projects, Enel, Siemens, TCI, Air Liquide. You can see that these are European multinational corporations which are trying to take advantage of hydrogen, especially as for Chile is concerned. La Sofagasta and Ovallanes are the two in the south and in the north. And you can see these two areas of Chile in the map, are the two chosen areas for the development of the hydrogen strategies, especially in Antofagasta in the north. Extraction of copper has long been a tradition. Chile is the first exporter of copper in the world, and the logics of extraction of copper will be duplicated for the extraction of lithium, but also for the production of hydrogen. Most hydrogen production facilities will be located along the coast, because they have desalination facilities which can be retrofitted and adapted to the production of green hydrogen. There are also the cities of Lyons and Sitocopia, which are cities where several thermal power facilities have been installed, and they have been working for decades now. The geopolitical relations, the technical aspects, the corporations' interests are not the only factors involved by this situation, because the citizens living in these areas are being impacted. There are organizations in Chile and Europe which are trying to support these areas which are heavily impacted by this need of energy transition. As we've seen in Chile, we sometimes tend to talk about figures, to talk about geographical areas in an abstract way. But when we went to Chile, we actually saw the community involved in their social, financial, economic, and geographical context. And you can see that these areas are populated by minorities, and there are inequalities. For example, in La Sofagasta, the jungle people see that their traditional fishing activities are threatened by these hydrogen and large infrastructure projects which are being adopted. And the marine biodiversity is another problem. It will be impacted by these projects. Thank you.
anticipo che le
Thank you,
presentazioni
Joseph. I just tell you
coordinatori delle
that if
presentazioni che
speakers
abbiamo
agree,
visto
the
oggi
presentation
saranno
of today
disponibili
will be
per i
available
partecipanti,
for
quindi vi
the.
chiedo relatori se
So
possibile di
I
farlo.
ask speakers if it's okay for you if we share your
Dispone
presentations,
la
and
registrazione
the
del
same for the
aggiornamento
recording
quest'oggi.
of the webinar of today.
C'è qualche domanda, quindi
There are
approfitterei
some questions, so I
del
will
tempo per rispondere
use this
ad
time
alcune.
to
Allora,
answer
c'è
to some of them. So
un
there
commento
is a comment
sì, diciamo che è un commento più che una domanda sulla
comment
situazione che il
on
Sahara
the
occidentale sta diciamo,
situation
soffrendo.
of the
Sappiamo che c'è una storia di prevaricazione. Scusami Rita, non
Western
ti vedo
Sahara.
ora la
Sorry,
mano.
Rita, I just saw your hands. It's up to you, please.
No, Eva, please, I'll give priority to our public, and then I will ask my questions if we have time. Okay, thank you.
Ok, grazie. Dicevo,
Thank you.
il Sahara occidentale che da
So I was telling
decenni
you there's a comment on Western Sahara,
del
which
Marocco
is
che in quel
which
caso
has been occupied for more than 50 years by Morocco. So Roberto says that Morocco is planning hydrogen production by agreement with a Chinese company in the territory of Western Sahara. So it is to produce for export and plants. And I agree with this. So we have dynamics in different countries. So extractivism is playing a huge role now in some contexts that are already weak because there are some groups having their rights violated. And so it seems that there's this will to impose a new colonialism in a certain way. Then, second comment, comment and question, Matteo, he says, he asks himself, so he says, I wonder, among the technologies proposed as answer to climate change, which ones are truly sustainable in our economic system? So I believe that Matteo is asking the right question, but I don't know if it is a question just for us or a rhetoric one. So I believe that in our economic system, we won't find a solution because it is an economic system based on continuous production for a continuous consumption and a continuous exploitation of our planet. So we have seen the impacts of all of these in Europe and outside too. So I believe that in this economic system there are no solutions. But anyway, there are some experiments, new realities, new ways of management of resources, of common goods. So we maybe need to move our attention from the economic system to other mechanisms. So maybe we can centralize energies. Maybe we can think about the possibility not to leave a huge corporate managing. But anyway, this is something, it's a long discussion. So maybe we can try and to consider technology in a different perspective. So we don't know if we can solving our problems. Maybe we have to focus on something else. And as far as the observation on the title of the report, The Illusion of Green Hydrogen. According to you, it was a risky simplification. So I invite you to read the report because I believe that reading the report, you will understand that there is no simplification. We had two researchers of the University of Bologna working for months to analyze data and to drawn up the conclusions you will find in our report. So we decided for the illusion of the green hydrogen. So because huge corporations are selling hydrogen as an illusion, as the panacea of the problems we have from the decarbonization of economy point of view. For some sectors, as Elena said, it could be a solution, but the title of this report it's not a simplification. It's a way to underline the idea that hydrogen maybe it's not a solution. I hope I have answered to this question. Meanwhile, there are other questions, so I start from the last one I mentioned. Don't know if we already had an answer by Elena. Okay, Elena answered. So, in the meantime, I just take the time to read the question. So, Rita, if you want to ask your question, please go ahead.
Thank you, Eva. Is that it's just that Elena's and Joseph presentations, they were so interesting that now I have so many questions. To start with Joseph, if you don't mind. Joseph, really interesting work you are doing in Chile, because it's very difficult in Europe sometimes to take a look of what is happening on in the other side of the world. I had some questions. If you know, I don't know if you had time yet in your project to know this, but from what I understood, there's a big impact in the biodiversity, marine biodiversity. Do you understand why is this? Is this because you have industry in general? Is this because you have desalinization machines? Do you understand the causes of this impact? Or because you have a port, I don't know, and you have ships passing by. I don't know. This is what came to my mind. Second question was, was there any positive impact in the populations? Do they have results of, oh, we have more jobs and the city or the cities around are more developed? Are there any positive impacts? And now I had some questions for Elena. Your slide about the transportation, I think it's the slide where it's about your study, one of the results of your study, where you show the impacts or the energy losses of transportation. If I well remember, the first part you say that for the compression, you would need 20 gigawatts of energy. Is that correct? Just for the compression? For that's what I wanted to have more clear, because I did not fully understand. But in any case, that slide is very scary, or it can be very useful because it shows how inefficient transporting hydrogen is. Thank you.
Joseph and Elena, it's up to you now. I believe the first question were for Joseph.
Gracias, Rita, por poner en valor el trabajo que hicimos en Chile. Pues
Thank you, Rita, for the interest in the Chile work. So the impact on marine biodiversity, this is due for the desalinization machines, because it's obvious that close to the old thermal plants, there usually there are the plants for hydrogen. So these structure are used in order to desalinate the water needed for the production, for the process of electrolysis for the production of the hydrogen. So these machines had a huge impact. So the salt is thrown in the sea, so the pH of the sea increases and the environment, the living environment changes. Fish, other animals, plants. So the environment was completely changed by these machines. This is because the salt was thrown in the sea. This was the main problem. What about the positive impacts? So we know that this region is a region having the mining activities, which is huge. And so there are 7 days, 7 working days, 14 rest days. There is a turnover. So people live in Santiago and go there in that region just to work. So there is not an impact because there are just people working in that area, and that's all. So there are no developments. We spoke with some communities and we saw that there are some settlements near, but these are not legal ones. So many people do not have access to electricity, so they use generators that was given by the municipality, and they just had a light for a short period of time. So the hydrogen has not solved any problem because the problem still exists. So usually those communities lived on the basis of fishing, but now fishing has been impacted by desalinization machines, and so the situation is even worse than before. So we try to explore a bit the impacts, but we can't say that there are positive impacts, and there are also interviews with those people. Yeah, we have been grown up in a way that we do not think about how a centralized system can work. So we are not used to these structures. In Italy, the backbone we spoke about is a backbone having a length of more than 1,200 kilometers from Sicily to the Alps. And in order to move the gas, today we use 961 megawatts of installed power. Today, these plants work with gas. This means that in the total calculation of the energy we use in Italy, there are 961 megawatts that are just dedicated to move gas. So if we assume a backbone just for hydrogen, this means that we will use 3 times more this energy. This is the calculation we've done comparing the installed renewable power, that is 20 gigawatt, so the same quantity of energy that is a scenario, a non-sustainable scenario. I just take the chance to answer what Sebastiano said in the Q&A section. He said, I'm confused regarding this talk of existing pipelines being used for hydrogen. It's true that the network is not suitable for hydrogen today, and in order to adapt it, SNAM and the other enterprises transporting gas are asking public resources, huge public resources. SNAM is also issuing bonds, bond for transition, so bonds that should help investing in the transition, and the revenues are used in order to finance the retrofitting of the network, so the adaptation of the network to transport a part of hydrogen, because with retrofitting we can transport just up to a certain quantity of hydrogen. In the Italian case, we can speak about 10%. Rita spoke about more or less the same percentage for Portugal, even mentioning that in the Portuguese case, this means extract pipes, adapting them and putting them again underground. So this is a huge investment. What makes the difference is that those enterprises asked for public investment, public financing, and these interventions allow to SNAM and other gas transport enterprises to say, okay, our network is able to transport a certain quantity of hydrogen, of other kinds of gases, for instance, biogas and others. So this is essential from the economic analysis and market analysis point of view, because an enterprise having its own assets, its own infrastructure, gas pipelines and plants, and just use them only for gas, where in an area where fossil gas will not be used anymore in 2050, this is a waste. And then saying that investing and saying that these pipelines can also transport other gases, this means that this infrastructure will be also used after 2050. So this is a market strategy, and this has a huge impact because we impose to countries to be always close to the fossil structure. So we need to do a transition. So we are trapped in a way in a system which is bonded to fossil fuels, so to a centralized system based on gas pipelines, so importing and exporting gas. We invest in gasifiers, and we say that in the future they will be able to manage also hydrogen, and we've seen before what are the costs for the liquid hydrogen. So how can I say, there's a problem, a complex problem in terms of cost, in terms of inefficiencies, in terms of unsustainability, but there is a problem of model too, as Eva said before. If we want to abandon the fossil fuel model, we have to invest in an alternative mechanism maybe in a mechanism where energy can be managed in a distributed way all over the territory. So we can split energy for houses, for heaters, energy which is used by families, and the energy that is used by enterprises, so that we can understand what is needed by whom. So hydrogen is not interesting now for enterprises. This is the reason why they want to create a market and want this massive investment in infrastructure. But this does not make sense even from the climate point of view. I don't know if also the other speaker wants to say something about it, but hydrogen has been studied, and hydrogen does not reduce the overall emissions. So this means that we have to continue to use fossil fuels. We have the capture of CO2 that is not working now, and we have many experiments, but these experiments do not go beyond the pilot phase. So we are in a moment where enterprises are interested, but the climate change cannot be managed that way. We have to find new mechanisms, new models, a fair model for the distribution of energy. Thank you, Elena. I don't know if the other speakers want to add something on that or comment on that. Or add something, I don't know. Joseph, there's also a question for you. I don't know if you see it on the chat. And if you want to answer. Which question? Alexandra Tost. How have you perceived the debate in Chile on green HI2, both within the government and also in the civil society? Thank you, I didn't see it. As far as the institutional point of view is concerned, the government, we have to take into account the fact that the national strategy of Chile has been set by the previous administration, the previous government. So the current government has just transposed it without modifying it. So the strategy on hydrogen, the strategy on raw materials is based on the same logics of the past. So the idea is to make it a pillar of the energy transition, not only hydrogen, but lithium, for instance. As far as civil society, there have been exchanges with colleagues of Sustentarse, an organization. So we visited many areas in the region, and we spoke also with the other enterprises working with the specific institutions. So from their point of view, so the public opinion is that everyone is in favor of hydrogen. So there are no criticalities. The population agrees. So obviously there is a part of the civil society which opposes to hydrogen, and we are an example of this portion of people. But we can say that there is an alignment with institutions and an alignment with the enterprises. And we are noticing that those who want to promote energy transition are the enterprises. We, as population, we will leave the positive and negative impacts. That answering to a question. There is a comment by Marco, but I believe it concerns a previous question on blending. I have not other questions up to now so far. I don't know if you want to add something or if you want to make comments or to promote maybe your links or publications, and this can be done also later on. But anyway, if you want to tell participants something, we can use these last minutes. Rita, it's up to you.
Thank you, Eva. I just wanted to add that all of this, it's because we have high hydrogen demands within European Union, not only in our own countries, but Central Europe. So it would be very important to have NGOs from the affected countries, such as ours, but also from the other countries, to really fight and question all this demand of hydrogen. So if in this public there's someone in this case, please feel free to contact us so we can build a case together. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Joseph. Thank you. I just wanted to do the same thing as Rita. Last week, we had a meeting in Barcelona just to speak about the H2 Med. It was a meeting where we met with Rita. So we had the opportunity to speak with her, Portugal, France, Germany. The idea was to really share ideas on what could be the need of civil society. We tried to find communities and to have a sort of feedback on their needs in order to then draw up an action plan for the future. We've seen that also in Italy, there are other pathways. There is this corridor that goes up from Sicily, then passes in Austria till Germany. So we are living a common situation. Maybe it could be a great idea doing networking, and it would be interesting, as Rita said, to understand which is the opinion of Germany also on this plan. So we've seen reforms of huge infrastructures for the transportation of hydrogen. So I wanted to be here because I wanted to promote exchanges, promote networking, and also with other groups in order to build alliances that will give us the needed strength to continue our work and to really lobby for our ideas. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Beyond the training purpose of this webinar, I'm happy we will have a chance to really create networks amongst new people, new organizations. So I'm happy this could be the opportunity. Just 2 minutes. There is one last question. I don't know if you can see it. I believe it's a comment more than a question. It's a comment. So there's no need to answer. I believe answers are not needed. Sorry, I'm just reading it. So just to see This is about HDF from France that is right now deforesting an area in French Guyana to produce hydrogen and boost electricity supply. And the problem is it's an Amerindian indigenous territory. But since France doesn't recognize the concept of an indigenous and therefore no special rights for indigenous people, the project is going on despite the opposition of the local community and other Amerindian communities. Clear, it says French Guiana is EU territory. I believe this is a case, maybe you have heard about it, or maybe it's something new and we can explore more and we can check. Roberto, can you please write to us and give us some more information on the topic? It would be interesting so that we can explore a bit more. Thank you. That's it. We are concluding now. Joseph, someone asked you if you wrote something, but you are answering, okay? Massimo is asking, do you think it's easier to oppose this project in countries where energy decentralization is promoted, such as Northern Europe, where there are many energy cooperatives, for example? I believe you mean that where in countries where there are more energy cooperatives, maybe there is more opposition, there is a higher sensitivity. Maybe this is the question, and I don't know if there is a correlation between the sensitivity. You can answer. In the context we are living in, where there is the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it overlapped to the crisis, the gas crisis. So Germany, I believe it's the country which is more on the country under more stress. So we had on one side the European Union pressing for finding new suppliers, and there was also the will to find hydrogen and new resources in other countries. So the agenda Joseph mentioned and Rita mentioned before, the agenda aiming at producing renewable energies in the Mediterranean basin mainly, so in the countries in the southern part of Europe, in order to transport it then in the north, and also the long distance hydrogen transportation agenda that is in parallel with another agenda aiming at extracting in the northern African countries energy produced by renewables, is extremely pressing, and it doesn't solve these agendas do not solve problems in any way. These agendas do not help us to solve the climate change, the climate crisis. So we really need to change the model. We are dependent on fossil gas, and we risk to be dependent on a large-scale centralized system traveling for thousands of kilometers. So we have really to think about this. This is not the right approach. The Italian government, the German government they do not use the right approach. I think also in Spain and in Portugal, the approach is always the same. But if we consider things from the community point of view, it's true. There are communities starting thinking about the energy democracy. They are trying to work in a way they can produce energy for their own use. So this is something that can be useful and that can be widespread and a larger scale. So I believe we need to invest. We already invested on those new possibilities. So we have to work in this sense. Thank you, Elena. So we are now at the end of our second webinar of the series Hydrogen Green Deal Greenwashing. I would like to thank participants who have been with us this evening. I'd like to thank the speakers and all those who helped us to organize this webinar from a technical point of view. We thank the interpreters and the host of this second webinar. We meet again on the 24th of October, that is within 1 month, to speak about Hydrogen EU, so how the European Union will finance with public funds the new infrastructures if we allow them to do so. So thank you very much and enjoy your evening. See you soon.
Ciao ciao.
Ciao.